my skin so gorgeous. We thank the life gorgeous. Thank the life gorgeous. I love the life gorgeous. Its torso is so tight.
Ladies and gentlemen, back from beautiful Carmel. We're back in the Mahogany Panel Den. This is the Life Gorgeous. My name is Craigers. This is where I share my magical life in hopes of improving your life. And one of my favorite guests, he is a writer for The Athletic. He is the Curry Kirkpatrick of his generation. Jonny Athletic, John Krawczynski. Nice to see you, sir.
Great to be here again, Craig. Always love sitting in the Life Gorgeous and soaking it up a little bit.
Do you remember Curry, or is that before your time?
Of course. Yeah. Yep. Absolutely. Curry Kirkpatrick, S.L. Price.
Yeah.
All the guys back in the day. That's what I grew up on. That's why I do what I do, is because I read those Sports Illustrateds that landed in my mailbox when I was a kid.
Yeah. By the way, I have this other joke. John Krawczynski, who, a little factoid, could not spell his last name until he was a junior in high school.
That's right. It's the C that gets you, Craig. That silent C in the middle of everything just really messes it all up.
So Curry Kirkpatrick, quickly, he was a clever writer, and I always like to tell people, in the 70s, I read Sports Illustrated, cover to cover, and the writers would turn a phrase, and I always like to say that there's this British guy named Alistair Cook, who he said, I heard the best writers in America write for Sports Illustrated. But I just remember Curry Kirkpatrick, one thing he wrote there, Miami Vice was a big show, and he said, hey, I was doing stubble and wearing no socks with loafers 10 years ago. Why are they all excited about this Sonny Crockett guy? But he was clever, wasn't he?
He was fantastic. I did the same thing, cover to cover. I saved all the Sports Illustrateds for years and years. Like they were iconic. It was Curry Kirkpatrick, Frank DeFord, Rick Riley, all these guys, Gary Smith, and back then, as you know, I don't have to tell you, we didn't have Twitter highlights all the time. We were they were painting pictures of these athletes that we very rarely saw on TV or in person. And it was just incredible stuff.
It was Sports Illustrated. It was my dad and Patrick Royce. That was it.
Yes, absolutely right. Yeah, that was absolutely what you did. And I was in the 80s is when I was coming up, but it's still the same thing. Like, that's what it was.
Well, it was really big. I mean, in the 70s, it was amazing. And I remember, I was obsessed with Dr. J, and he had his first game with the Sixers, and they introduced him, and someone came out and handed him a satchel. And in his first game at home in the Spectrum against the Spurs, and he had a dunk in Sports Illustrated. They said it was a puny 6.5 on the Irving Wow scale. I just remember, I can't remember who wrote it, but it was just great.
That's beautiful.
So you cover, just for the people, you cover the Wolves for The Athletic, but you also are a Vikings fan.
Yeah, and I would say I'm the main Wolves writer for The Athletic, but then I also help Alec Lewis, our Vikings writer, during the season too. And so I'll go to the Vikings home games. I'll cover those teams. I'm not in it every single day, but I'm certainly involved and writing about it and covering it and talking to these guys and stuff. So that's definitely part of the job. For sure.
And because you grew up in Minnesota, you are a Vikings fan.
Yeah, I grew up a Vikings fan. I grew up a Wolves fan, and all that. Some of that stuff has had to be set to the side as I've gotten pro, but I still I have all the memories of it.
Yeah.
Randy Moss, Thanksgiving Day, that kind of stuff is, those are formative memories of the youth. Kirby Puckett, and we'll see you tomorrow night, and all that stuff. So yeah, this is where I'm from. This is what I grew up on. So I know it well.
Yeah. And I call you Minnesota nice. I think you're a great writer, wordsmith, but I think you're Minnesota nice. And this transitions into Mike Zimmer, and I'm a Zimmer fan.
Yeah.
And I don't think Minnesota nice wins Super Bowls, but I think I told you this a few years ago. It's okay that you and I can disagree on something, because I love my brother and I disagree with him, and my dad, I disagreed with him all the time, but we really were fond of each other. So, I told you that I disagreed with your take on the Blair Walsh. When Blair Walsh missed that field goal, I wanted him cut in the locker room from the team.
Yes.
And I think Zimmer wanted to do that. Spielman talked him out of it. And you took a different tact. So what was your feeling back then?
I mean, certainly incredible disappointment at missing such an easy kick. Well, not an easy kick, but a straightforward kick. But I mean, I just remember how cold it was, the wind, all of those things. I was a little bit more forgiving or just giving compassionate might be the right word. I was not ready to burn his jersey in the streets or anything like that. And then we had the kids, at the elementary school who wrote him some letters and all that. How heartwarming was that, Craigers? Come on, you loved it.
It's still an L in the playoffs for Mike Zimmer.
You're right.
So, for the people who don't know, in the Minneapolis Star-Tribune, Mark Craig, the veteran, wrote an article with the approval of Mike Zimmer. Mike talked to him and finally unloaded and let it be known what he thought about getting fired, I guess, 2 years ago from the Minnesota Vikings. I was and am a Mike Zimmer fan, although there's some disappointment I have with him that I'll go into. So the article, Scorched Earth, what are your thoughts on the article and Mike Zimmer after reading that?
Yeah, I mean, I texted you. It was Zim at his Zimmest. Like that was it, which I really loved about it, because there are so many times that this happens, Craig, where someone gets fired and then they might reflect on it later, and it's a softened kind of look at back. The hard feelings have subsided, or they're just trying to be diplomatic, and not ruffle too many feathers. Maybe they want to try and have another job down the road and all those. And clearly Mike Zimmer had no worries about any of that. And so this was candid Mike Zimmer. This is exactly what he felt. He was really genuine in his comments to Mark Craig. We may disagree, or there may be things in there you look at and say, how could he look at it this way? But what I really did appreciate the most about it was this was Mike Zimmer telling you exactly what he thought, not pulling any punches, not hiding anything. And so I think that was refreshing for at least that part of it. Don't sugarcoat things. Don't BS me. Tell me exactly what you think.
Do you think, when someone says this and is interviewed, it's cathartic for Mike Zimmer to say these things to Mark Craig, and I believe he trusts Mark Craig.
Yes.
Then when he reads it, does he go, oh boy, maybe I should have softened? Or does he go, we don't know, we're guessing, but what do you think Zimmer's reaction to it? We're seeing that thing in print.
So my guess is, Craig, that for Zimmer, he was like, yep, looks great. That's what I said. That's what I believe. Okay, I'm standing by it. There may be others in his shoes who would have really vented and just got it off their chest and then had second thoughts about it, had regrets about going that far. But Mike Zimmer's not that guy. He's not going to worry about ruffling feathers like that. He's not going to worry about, offending anyone or ticking anyone off, because he believes that he was wrong. I may disagree in some respects. I think there were some points that he made that were valid.
Absolutely.
But I think that he probably looked at it. The only thing he might see is it has gotten obviously a lot of attention, and he may not want to bring that onto himself or onto his new team as much. But in terms of the content of the quotes and the story in general, I bet he looked at that and said, yeah, that's exactly how I feel. No regrets.
That's us, the Vikings. You and I are on the team. We host the Cowboys this year, correct?
Yeah, I think so. Right. Yeah. That'll be interesting. Right. No, they actually, do they play? I don't think they play this year.
Wait a second. I thought we did.
Nope.
Let me just double. They don't?
No, they don't. So, unless they meet in the playoffs, which seems to be predestined now. It's going to happen.
Let me just quickly see. Maybe you're right. Why did I think we played the Cowboys? Wait a second. Oh, you're right. Hey, good job, man. Why did we play Kirk Cousins? The Falcons come to the Vikings.
Yes.
Okay, so What were your interactions with Mike Zimmer? Did you have to interview him a lot, and was it intimidating?
I had to interview him a lot. I thought that one of my most favorite parts of my career has been being in a post-game press conference with Mike Zimmer every time, because yes, there were times where he was maybe trying to be a little bit bullyish or trying to kind of get at you a little bit. I never take that stuff personally. Like, that's fine for me. But what I knew in those moments was we are going to get exactly what Mike Zimmer thinks and exactly what he feels. He is not going to play the diplomat. He's not going to play politics. He's not going to try and protect any relationships with players or cover for anyone. In those moments after a game, especially after a tough loss, it was Zimmer just as candid as can be.
Yeah.
And so what he was honest, incredibly honest with us. Now, he was a ornery guy. Like, he could be really moody. He could be sometimes difficult to deal with. But in terms of, there's two things I knew about Mike Zimmer. One is he's a hell of a coach. Like, he knows what to do, especially defensively. And two is he's going to be honest and upfront with you in what he says. Again, like, there were times where I thought that he went about it the wrong way or didn't handle something the right way, or there, especially at the end of his tenure here, it was clear that everyone was miserable and it was not going well and that something had to change. But just in terms of my personal interactions with him, I respected who he was and what he knew and how he went about it. Just maybe had some disagreements with some of the messaging and the way that he kind of tried to be a leader of the whole team. I think that was maybe sometimes where he fell a little bit short.
Yeah. So let me give you my thoughts on Mike Zimmer. This may try to be somewhat focused here because I have different thoughts, but for whatever reason, I really liked him.
Mhm.
I know he's a troubled human being, and we can get into that. But part of my thing is, I think when it comes to coaches, I'm accepting of Bill Parcells. I'm accepting of hard asses because I want to win these games. In life, I talk about, I worked with some bitter people in late night. I think as a society, I'm getting deep here, by the way. No,
Yeah.
as a society, we're too patient with the malcontents. So I like temperament in politics. I like Barack Obama's temperament, Mitt Romney's temperament. But in entertainment, I don't like men that are hotheads. So I don't like actors with Sean Penn when he blows up, or Russell Crowe. I don't like the tortured Dave Letterman is kind of a miserable guy. They say cranky, which is a cute word. It disappoints me. But when it comes to coaches, this guy cared. He slept at the office. He got emotional. The first season as a Viking, last game, he said, Xavier Rhodes just came up to me and said, "Thank you for making me a better player." And Zimmer got choked up. And I'm like, God damn, this guy cares. So I really liked him, and I still do. I wish someone would give him advice. It's too bad about Terrence Newman. He says he holds grudges. So he's very flawed, and he needs help. But and it's tragic with his life, with his son. It's just it's rough. Let me tell you something else. When I was a kid in the 70s, you had a hothead named Bobby Knight and this hothead named John McEnroe. And when we would watch Bobby Knight, we would laugh. Look at him. He's sticking out his belly and his sweater, and he's getting a technical and he's saying stuff. And we'd laugh. Yeah. And when McEnroe did his stuff, we wouldn't laugh. We'd say, somebody slap him. What a brat. But if you compare the two, Bobby Knight had more serious mental health issues than John McEnroe. So it's a long way of saying I accept Mike Zimmer as a coach. I wish he personally, his daughter, someone would help him a little bit, but he's a troubled man.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that one thing that resonates with a lot of fans about Mike Zimmer, certainly here locally, that you could feel it when he was here, was he is who you picture a football coach to be from the 70s, from the 80s, from this simpler time when, we're all nostalgic about our youth,
Right.
and we all look back and say it was better then than it is now. And I think that one of the differences today is a lot of the coaches, Kevin O'Connell being one of them, are more emotionally available, are more connectors, communicators, all that stuff. And meanwhile, the coaches that you and I grew up with, you were in fear of them all of the time.
Woody Hayes.
Yes, they ruled with.
Do you remember him or not?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I remember. I kind of grew up a Michigan fan, so I knew that lore. And I think that there was something that connected certainly with Mike Zimmer. He's old school. He's tough. He's not afraid to offend anyone. He's going to get after you. He's going to push you to greater heights because you're not going to like him. Herb Brooks, all those guys. And I think that where he fell short though was that you can lose sight of the way that the teams and the athletes have adapted a little bit, and you can want it to be the old school way, but if it's changed to such a degree, you have to adapt or you're going to get fired. And I think that's what happened with him.
The defense was awful his last year.
They gave up on him, Craig. They gave up on him.
And the year before, he inverted the defensive ends against New Orleans, put Everson Griffin, Daniil Hunter inside, and it worked, and it was one of my favorite playoff wins.
Yes.
But I want to run some coaches. So I think Woody Hayes was at Ohio State. You had
Bo Schembechler.
Yeah. We want a Michigan man coaching. Parcells was a hard ass, and he's tight with Zim. But I think now here's a guy that's nothing like that, but I think he's a great coach, and I just love this answer. So I like Eric Spoelstra.
Yeah.
And he's no nonsense. And one of my favorite quotes is they're playing the finals against Denver, the altitude. He goes, "What about the altitude?" He goes, "I don't care. We'll play at top of Mount Everest."
Yes.
I just love that. And so you can be no nonsense and not be a son of a bitch, an
100%.
SOB. Maybe I'll bleep that, SOB.
Yeah. Your Spo example is 100% right on, because one of my favorite things about Spoelstra that he says all of the time is, we don't load manage, we're the Miami Heat. So you're setting expectations,
right?
And it is you have to pass this conditioning test to play for the Heat. It's legendary and how demanding it is and grueling it is. But he does all of that, but he also lets the players know how invested he is in them. He connects with them. He communicates with them. He does the new agey things. You don't have to be just a cuddly, super likable, really nice guy to have success as a coach anymore. But I do think that you can be demanding, but you can also be accepting as well a little bit. And I think that's where Spoelstra is one of the very, very best at it.
He asked Jimmy, "Are you going to hit me? Are you going to hit me? You want to hit me?"
Hey, like that. Your guy Finchy does it pretty well too, Craig.
Yeah.
He will let people know when they're messing up, when they're not meeting their standards, when they have to be better. But he also has this open door policy. Hey, I'm here for you. You have problems, come talk to me. Let's communicate. Let's figure things out together. It's a good quality to have, to be able to walk that line.
The only problem with Finchy is the same as Karl Anthony Towns. They're Philadelphia Eagles fans, but we'll get into that later.
That is a character flaw, no question.
Okay, so I think that's enough on Zim. I think, I said that. I'm very hard on people with their temperament outside of coaching. I kind of accept the flaws of Zim, and I hope he finds some peace later on. But he's coaching the Cowboys, so he's happy now. He's the defensive coordinator. Let's talk about our Vikings. The Vikings at the Giants. No Addison, no Hawkinson. Who wins this game? Because I've heard some people say this is you got to win this game because you might go get a string of 7 losses otherwise. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I am not a big must-win guy, especially in week 1. But if they do want to be in the mix for a playoff berth, it feels like one you got to get, just given the way that the schedule
Totally agree.
So I feel pretty good about the Vikings defense against Daniel Jones this time around. I think that, I really like Neighbors, their wide receiver, their rookie, but he's a rookie. He's going to have things that he's going to have to deal with. And I'd rather catch him week 1 rather than week 13 when he's established. So I don't think the Giants are very good.
Right.
And I think if the Vikings lose, it's a bad sign of what this season could become.
Right.
But ultimately, Craig, I do believe they can go in there and win. I think that they can do enough offensively, and that defensively they will keep the game close, and they can win a close one on the road.
That's a good point, because I've just been reading, and people are kind of high realistically on the defense. Like, they're not as concerned, even though I thought we needed a tackle for the running game. We need to add something there, but they're kind of confident right now in the defense. And then it becomes the obvious thing is Sam Darnold. So I like him. I like his talent. I know he's inconsistent. I need him to play solid. Nick Mullins moved the team last year and then threw 4 picks. So he's, we know he has major issues. But if Sam Darnold can be, considerably better than Nick Mullins, we're okay. What are your thoughts on Sam Darnold? And are you just like everybody else? Big question mark?
Well, I mean, so I was with your guy Barrero at the fair just last week, and we missed you out there this year. But
yeah, it was a little hot last year, by the way. How was the temps this year?
Beautiful. Like there was 2 really hot days. There was 1 really rainy, stormy day.
Right.
But for the most part, it was really comfortable. So
was there a nice crowd there for your appearance?
Yeah, there's a couple dozen in there packing it on those bleachers. So
that's great.
But what
does Dan, have you talked to Dan yet about Caleb Williams? Because he's got to be ecstatic.
I think he has so far kept that under his vest, because he has the scar tissue like Vikings fans have of all the playoff defeats.
Yeah.
Dan has the Bears quarterback PTSD. And so he's like, he is cautious, he is optimistic, he loves it, but he doesn't want to say it and worry about jinxing things.
Okay.
So, but you can feel that he's intrigued by him a lot.
Back to Sam Darnold.
For Sam Darnold, what I think is, I think Sam Darnold actually has more to gain and more to lose this season than almost any player in the league, because he's sort of like teetering on the edge of, is he a starter? Is he not? Is he a backup? Is he not?
Yeah.
It didn't work with the Jets, didn't work with the Panthers. He had the redshirt year last year with the Niners. And so it feels like if he can have a really good season, he can parlay that into a long-term deal as a starting quarterback in this league. Someone will give him a shot.
Right.
If it doesn't work out, then he's going to be hanging on to the league by his fingernails. It's going to be, can this guy, is there a spot for him? So can he do it? Yes, I think he can do it. I think he's physically talented enough. People around here really like what he's done so far in the preseason, in the training camp. But it is one of those things where he has to show you. You have to do it sustained over weeks and weeks for you to see something that has not been seen yet with his career.
How do you compare his talent to Baker Mayfield?
Yeah, I think very similar talent. Mayfield was number 1 overall. Sam was what, 3? Number 3 overall. I think Mayfield had a better college career than Sam Darnold did, but I think they're 2 guys with really live arms that will take chances down the field, that have to really kind of focus on their decision making.
Right.
Because that's the thing that had plagued both of them. Then you saw Baker Mayfield with a good offense and a good coordinator last year, worked out pretty well. I think that can happen for Sam Darnold, because there's no question he has more talent around him, coaching staff, players on the offense, than he's ever had. So that's
because I saw Baker a couple years ago play at the Vikings, and he had a lot of open receivers and he kept missing them. And I go, God, this guy is not accurate at all. And I was rooting for him last year, and I thought he played great, and I enjoyed it. He has a lot of confidence, which is good. But I sometimes think Sam Darnold is more talented. I could be wrong. No, but I'm pulling for Sam. I love that the first game is so important. What's the feeling on B-Flow? Because I'm so grateful he's there and not, and now it looks like the head coaching offers may dwindle even more.
Mhm.
What's the vibe on Brian Flores in Minnesota?
I think the perfect fit
Yeah.
here, because kind of a little bit like Zimmer in terms of a guy who will get after you, who will really hold you accountable, can be a little bit ornery, but a tactician genius, and he takes players who are not as good in the individual, puts them into a system, adapts around them, and makes them play better than they actually are.
Right.
And that, I think, is the greatest compliment you can give a coach.
Yeah.
I also think, Craig, that his personality mixes with Kevin O'Connell beautifully.
Yeah.
Because he can be a little bit of the red ass and just get after you and holler and scream a little bit sometimes. And then you have the head coach, who is kind of the all-encompassing message deliverer, and who is a much different kind of communicator. And so they complement each other really, really well.
Right.
But when you talk to defensive players playing for Brian Flores, like, they believe in him. They're like, he's going to put me in the right positions,
right,
so I can play my best. And that's what you need in the NFL more than anything.
So KOC, my only concern with KOC, what's my only concern with KOC? Did I tell you this before?
I don't think so.
Just the marriage of the run game and the pass game. I'm make sure you run that ball.
Yeah, he likes to throw it.
I love what Kyle Shanahan does. And as Zim used to say, it takes the soul out of the defense. If you could just keep pounding it and running it, it just demoralizes the defense. So I'm hoping Aaron Jones has a great year, and Ty Chandler, and I just wanted to make sure he mixes it. Now, he has said, I've seen some interviews, and he said he's going to definitely run the ball more.
Yeah. I think he, if he were being absolutely truthful, would tell you that last year they very much underestimated the importance of the run game. They thought, hey, we can go into this season with Alexander Mattison and Wong-Woo and all these guys, and I don't really need a running back to have success. Like, I can dial up all of the different passes that we can do, and we can use screen passes to supplement. We don't need it. No, you need some dynamic element to your running game to at least keep the defense a little bit honest. And now you have Aaron Jones, who is a legit running back in this league. And I think that we are going to see what a difference that makes very early on, as long as Jones stays healthy.
Yeah, his durability is a question mark. And I also heard recently, because I didn't watch him enough, I know he's talented, but I don't know how much he holds on to the ball. I hope it's better than Dalvin and Adrian, but who knows? Maybe it's probably about the same as far as the fumbles.
Yeah.
John, I have a question that I came up with the other day, and it's, you're the first Minnesota Vikings fan I'm testing it on. I like this question a lot. I really do. And I have an answer, and I want to hear your answer. For the listeners and viewers, the Vikings are, some say, the greatest franchise to never win a Super Bowl. And it kind of wears on some of the fans. So the Vikings are going to go 3-14. This is a hypothetical. How many consecutive 3-14 seasons can you endure if they're guaranteed a Super Bowl win the next season? Now, this is interesting. I want you to think about that.
Yeah.
Because my answer may shock you, but I'm saying too much already.
Sure.
What do you think of that question? Do you like that question?
It's a great question. Because I think it taps into not just the desperation, but not just of a Super Bowl title, Craig, but of any men's championship in this town. There is such a thirst for it. And clearly the Vikings are at the top of the mountain.
Yep.
So I think if any fan said you are guaranteed a Super Bowl championship within, the next year after whatever this string of 3-14s is, I bet that they could say, I can do 3 of them.
3 seasons?
I can do 3 of them.
That's good. Mine's 2.
Yeah.
Mine is 2.
Yeah.
I'm done. Yeah. I don't want to go 3. I guess I don't want it to, but I think I really believe there's some people, I'll take 10,
Yeah. Yeah,
I don't care. I just want.
Yeah, that's too much. Like, and because
3 is a good. I'm really proud of you for saying that. That's a good one because
yeah,
that's not too desperate.
What you don't realize too, Craig, in the middle of like the one thing about the Vikings, they haven't won a Super Bowl. They have rarely been terrible. Like,
I know.
They're usually really good or pretty good.
That's what I say that to people. I talked to my Jets fans and I said, would you rather, what would you rather? And they say, some of them said, give up the Super Bowl, the Joe Namath Super Bowl. I just want to be good more often. This is so depressing.
Yes.
So it's interesting.
And so, but those, when you're in the middle of a 3-14 season, that is a long slog. So I do think 3 is probably the limit. 2, you're probably right. Like after 2, you'd want to just fire everyone and get moving. So
do you remember the last year? I think Leslie Frazier, we were in the sweepstakes for Andrew Luck and we won at Washington, which hurt us. But remember how many wins did we have that year? You don't remember, do you? It wasn't a lot.
He had a 3-13 season.
That's what I thought.
Yeah.
We rarely have those seasons.
No, it almost never happens here. And so, when you're in the middle of that, you're like, oh boy, because it's a long, grueling, ugly experience and everyone knows you're bad and it's real tough.
Okay. Timberwolves pride. I always enjoy, you love the Wolves. I love the Wolves. Coming up soon here. I'm going to just a couple odd things first. I was watching Karl Anthony Towns on the Rich Eisen show, and I thought he made up a word, but it actually is a word. I said, oh my God. So he was, the root word is exuberance, and he said exuberate. And I was like, he says, yeah, ant sometimes exuberates, whatever. And I was like, oh, that's kind of, and I looked it up. It's a verb. Had you ever, is that weird?
I had never heard that word. I would have thought the same thing because he is prone to say things, as you and I both know. And so, that I would have thought that too, because I have never heard exuberates. I've certainly never written it in a story. I might have to use that going forward here. So,
I mentioned Cat and Finch, your Eagles fans, and I'm trying to be accepting of that. It's weird because when I was growing up, I liked Walter Payton. So I liked the Bears and I liked Bart Starr and I liked Brett Favre and I like Aaron Rodgers. So I don't hate the Packers, but I'm a true Vikings fan, but I don't hate the Packers. The Eagles bother me because of the fan base. It's so low rent.
Yes. I was right there with you. Yeah,
but
absolutely.
Let me ask you, does it, as a Vikings fan, do you have relatives or friends that are Packer fans and does it bother you?
So yes. So I would say that while I have kind of set most of my fandom aside as I've ascended to where I'm at in the media sphere,
the Curry Kirkpatrick of our generation,
the Curry Kirkpatrick of our generation. Yes. I one thing that still gets under my skin is Packer fans. Like I really do have a hard time with them. There's so many of them that move here from Wisconsin to have paved roads and running water and all of the nice things that we have here that they do not have. But they are an annoying bunch, and partly because they've had a lot of success and they've had a great quarterback for 25 years in a row. And I believe that if the Vikings were in the same situation, if you just reversed their last 30 years, I think Vikings fans would probably be similar in the way that they feel themselves and the way that they are letting everyone know. But the one thing that really bothers me, Craig, is the I own Packers stock. I'm a team owner. Like, you literally are just lighting your money on fire. It does you no good whatsoever. You're not making money off of it. You're not in the decision. Let's stop with that. All right.
That's hilarious.
But yes, that is one thing that I have not sort of been able to get rid of. As I've tried to become, more professional and more, what I do, that the Packer fandom can really kind of get in my craw for sure.
Timberwolves, Rob Dillingham. I was a little concerned during summer league. He finally had one good game. Have you heard any rumblings from your connections with the Wolves, some of the assistants or even the head coach, or is Rob in town? And what are your thoughts on Rob Dillingham? What are the Wolves' thoughts on Rob Dillingham?
Yeah, I mean, certainly. So I've talked to people about it. He is in town. He's been in town for a while. He is a lot of the Wolves people, especially the Tim Connollys and the scouts who kind of came up with, the evaluation that he's what they needed, are incredibly excited
Oh,
about
good.
what he can do. I do think that everyone understands that this is probably going to be a little bit of a learning curve for him. He's going to play point guard. He's very undersized.
Yep.
But when you watch him in games, and then when he's been working out at Mayo Clinic Square, the electricity that he has and the sort of ingenuity to create his own shot, even with that undersized frame, I think people look at that and say, this is exactly what we were missing against Dallas. They just could not keep up with Kyrie and Luka offensively in that series. Ant needed someone else who could just create a bucket. And they think that Rob will be able to do that. There may be some tough times early as he gets acclimated to the bigger size speed of the NBA and figures out how he gets his shots off. But he is so creative and so quick that I keep hearing a lot of Nick Van Exel. Like that's kind of a comparison of the hopefully someday he can get to that point. That's what people like about him. Shot maker, really good passer. And a guy who just is going to bring energy, off the bench.
Yeah, I was surprised he missed a lot of shots. He was shooting a low percentage in the summer league. The good news is he did shoot a high percentage as a freshman at Kentucky, shot like 47.5% overall, which is really good. Much better than Allen Iverson's first year at Georgetown.
That's right.
But I'm not an Iverson fan. I'm not a volume shooter kind of guy, but I'll hold space that this guy is special. He is very, as we like to say, shifty and handles the ball well. But so I'm excited about that.
Well, one thing, Craig, one thing that may fit to what you like is I do think there is some belief among people who haven't watched him a whole lot that all he is a volume scorer. Like he's a microwave guy off of the bench. And what Tim Connolly and Chris Finch have told us is that they believe that he's going to run an offense, that he's going to run pick and roll with Rudy. He's going to be able to distribute, get others involved. And so if he can, I'm not saying he can, but if he can do that, that changes sort of the outlook of what he can be rather than just some guy who, comes off the bench and gives you 12 points in 17 minutes. So.
I need him to be better than Dennis Schroeder.
Yes.
That's what I need.
Point. Yeah.
Terrence Shannon Jr. You heard anything about him?
Well, yeah, I think that kind of the opposite of Rob in terms of Rob is 19 years old,
right?
Undersized, relies on quickness and all that. Terrence Shannon is 23. He's older than Ant. He really legitimately older than Ant. He is, when you stand next to him, he's all of 6'7", 215 pounds. He's a big dude. So he's going to use physicality. He's going to use size and hustle. What everyone says about him is he's just a worker. He will play harder than anyone else. And so I think he has a chance to be at the back end of the rotation.
So he'll be after Naw and Joe Ingles or in the mix with those guys?
So I think, I think he will be in the mix with Joe Ingles and for that sort of pseudo Kyle Anderson replacement,
right?
In the rotation. Now, Anderson played a lot of minutes, but I think they're going to give some of those to Nas, and then in that 8-9 spot in the rotation, it's going to be Ingles and Shannon probably, because Minot will get a chance. I don't know that he's going to do it. Yep.
Sorry.
So it'll be.
I don't mean to hurt anyone's feelings.
No, yeah, I just think that. I think that it'll be Shannon and Ingles. And, there are going to be times where Ingles is an older guy. He's not going to play all of the time. And so that will open the door a little bit more for Terrence Shannon, I think, to get in there and kind of they want him just to get out there, run the break, do stuff and impose his physicality and his size on the game. And that's a different dimension than what they have at that wing spot otherwise.
Yeah, I was very impressed with the draft with Tim Connolly working his magic that we got those two studs, the potential studs. Okay, I'm going to say something. I'm going to say something controversial about the Wolves, and then we're going to wrap it up. But the Boston Celtics won the NBA championship from the Eastern Conference. They had the best record. They weren't really challenged. I think if they're challenged, it wears them out. I think that's what happened with the Wolves, the stunning Game 7 win at Denver. So here's my controversial statement. I don't know. Maybe it's childish, maybe not. I'm more impressed that the Wolves won Game 7 at Denver than the Celtics winning the championship. Your response?
Ooh. Hey, I like that. Absolutely. Because you come from 20 down in the second half to beat the defending champs on the road. I was there, Craig. I've never seen anything like it, because there were more than 1,000 Wolves fans there. Yeah. And you heard them late in the third quarter and then in the fourth as they just took the game from Denver. And it was phenomenal. It was an unbelievable thing. And to your point, I do think that these inexperienced Wolves kind of thought after they won that game,
that was it.
They've climbed the mountain, no problem.
Yep.
When really they were halfway through. They were only halfway through the playoffs. They had 2 more series to win. And I do think they ran out of gas. But in terms of, the individual accomplishment of doing that, especially for this franchise that has never done it before, just incredibly, incredibly impressive and super fun. The Celtics were by far the best team. They deserved the championship. They were all those things. Their run, they were not challenged as much. So kudos to them for winning it, for doing all of that. Yeah. But the Wolves were really challenged and pushed in that series, and that was just really compelling to watch. I'm not going to do the Karl Anthony Towns thing where he said, well, when we made the play-in, it was actually more impressive than Denver winning the championship. Like, I'm not going to say that it was more impressive, but it was really exhilarating to watch it and see it. And it was a different emotional thing than watching the Celtics just steamroll as they did to the title.
Yeah. The other question I have, and I'll ask you, but I have an answer, but I've heard some people, I think even like Ryan Russillo was saying, God, I think Minnesota would have beaten Boston. I don't know why he says that, but I mean, why he believes in them so much, but maybe it's just to bother Bill Simmons, who knows? But did you think the Wolves missed an opportunity at a championship? Was this their best hope? Because are the next 5 years going to be more difficult? What are your thoughts?
Well, so I do think that, I mean, the league is all about matchups. Dallas was a bad matchup for them. They won. They deserved to be there. But I do think that the Wolves were a better matchup for Boston than Dallas was.
Right.
And so I do think they would have given the Celtics more problems, and maybe they would have won. I'm not sure about that. But when you look at it's tough, Craig, because when you do look at it, I think that there is an expectation among some fans. Okay, Wolves got to the Western Conference Finals. The next step is the finals, and you just go right up the ladder. It's not like that.
It doesn't work like
Rudy Gobert and Mike Conley are so important to what this team does, and they're getting older. So the window, I think, is right now, which is why you saw Tim Connolly mortgage the future to go get Rob Dillingham. It's like, we got to go right now. Now, I think with Anthony Edwards, you're always going to be in it going forward. But I think right now, last year and then this year coming up are like maybe their 2 best opportunities.
Yeah, because I think the Mike Conley thing you can't count on for too long.
Yeah.
And I love him. And he hit 2 huge threes in the second half at Denver in Game 7. The reason I say to someone, no, it wasn't necessarily a missed opportunity, is we weren't clearly the best team. When you're clearly the best team, if that happened with the Warriors a few years back. But our offense, as we said, was not, I don't think it was a top 10 offense.
No.
But so we were really good. Here's the problem. I'm going to say something to make John Krawczynski very happy. We swept the Phoenix Suns. They had our number in the regular season. Phoenix is a different team this year for one reason. Tyus Jones.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Your guy.
That is right. He's going to be good for them. Taking a minimum deal. Oh my gosh, what a deal. And then he's going to start for them. Good for Tyus. Well, tough for Tyus that he had to settle for that. But I mean,
he's got some money. He made some money in Washington.
He'll be okay. Yeah, he'll be okay. And he'll get paid. But that's exactly what KD and Booker need, is someone to organize that offense. And so that's the thing, Craig, is like this Western Conference, Phoenix is better. Memphis is going to be better. San Antonio is going to be better. OKC, all of these, it's going to be so difficult. Like if you get a top 6 coming out of this season in the West, that's like a top 2 seed in most years. Like it's going to be that competitive.
I always say for the Lakers, watch out for D'Lo. Okay, I'm just D'Lo. Always a joy to hear your voice, young man, and to talk Minnesota sports.
Great to see you, Craig. I'll be out. I can't wait till opening night in LA. I will see you out there, my friend.
October 22nd.
That's right.
Drinks on me.
I can't wait.
That's Jonny Athletic, John Krawczynski from The Athletic. My name is Craig Kilborn. We'll see you next time, young people. And remember, I'm proud of you.
I love the life gorgeous. Its torso is so tight.